Tonight, 2 years after a young man was found dead inside Prince Albert police cells, a longtime police officer is facing charges. Also,
she needs to come down from that pretty little office of hers and come and communicate with us.
Calls on Regina's mayor to engage as the number of tents outside City Hall and overdoses increases. Plus, we take you inside a wellness center in Regina where some veterans and first responders who struggle with PTSD are learning about medical cannabis for relief.
This is CBC Saskatchewan News.
It is Wednesday, July 12th, and the CBC Saskatchewan News starts right now. Good evening and thanks for joining us. A Prince Albert police officer of more than 20 years is facing criminal charges for an in-custody death 2 years ago. The unnamed member is charged with negligence causing death and failing to provide the necessities of life. This comes after the death of 33-year-old Saul Laliberty. He was arrested November 7th, 2021 and later found unresponsive in the Prince Albert Police Detention Facility. The Saskatoon Police Service was called in to investigate. Last month, the Crown notified PA Police that charges would be laid. The officer is now off duty and they'll make their first court appearance later this month. In a statement, the interim police chief said maintaining public trust is of great importance. Nearly 50 homeless people are now sleeping in tents outside Regina City Hall. The encampment is growing, and so are issues and concerns about health and safety. As Nicholas Frew reports, there have been 9 overdoses at the camp so far.
The homeless encampment in front of City Hall continues to grow. It started over 3 weeks ago, and now, according to the city, there are 72 tents in the courtyard and 47 people living there. This woman, who identified herself as Pink Mitten, is one of them. She says the people living in the encampment want to start a dialogue with Mayor Sandra Masters.
She needs to come down from that pretty little office of hers and come and communicate with us. Come and get to know her people, as she calls us.
The city says Regina Fire and Protective Services reported 9 overdoses at the camp. Emergency services and volunteers responded, but treatment was refused in 2 of those instances. The fire department has taken steps to remove fire hazards, and police are checking in with residents regularly. There's frequent garbage pickup, and people living here can access washrooms inside City Hall during business hours and use a temporary washroom in Victoria Park the rest of the time. This poverty advocate says there needs to be more collaboration to tackle the issue of homelessness.
We all like to work in silos, and so it's breaking down that siloed system and coming together to work at a round table with all of us present. The City of Regina, Saskatchewan Health Authority, Ministry of Social Services, all of the community-based organizations, mental health and addiction sectors, they need to be there because this is not going to go away.
The city says the Ministry of Social Services and community outreach teams are trying to help. Mitten says many of the people living there need mental health and addiction services.
We need mental health to be addressed because a lot of us, we suffer with mental health. Addictions, that's a major thing here. But a lot of us are also trying to stay clean, and it's hard to stay clean in a toxic environment.
The city says its priority is the health and safety of all residents. Mitten says she doesn't feel safe here. Nicholas Frew, CBC News, Regina.
The Saskatchewan government has reached a multi-million-dollar settlement with the developer of a halted building project in Wascana Park. The government is paying Brandt Properties $11.6 million to settle a lawsuit launched by Regina-based company last year. It goes back to Brandt's controversial building proposal inside Wascana Park. In 2014, the company launched a plan to construct a 4-story, 77,000 square foot building that would also become a new home for the CNIB. But the project was criticized by residents against development in the park and how the process was handled. In 2019, the CNIB was demolished. In a statement to CBC, the government says all issues related to the former CNIB site have been resolved. That includes termination of CNIB's 99-year lease and an agreement that no further construction will be done at that location. In a statement, Brandt told CBC it looks forward to putting the issue behind it. The opposition NDP says the government's health recruitment strategy is to blame for an intensive care bed shutting down this summer. The NDP met the media outside the Regina General Hospital this morning. The opposition obtained an internal memo from a senior leader at the SHA that was sent to staff last month. The memo says issues with contract staff led to the decision to close the ICU bed until early September. Opposition health critic Vicky Mowat says relying on contract nurses is a bad strategy.
We have pointed out on numerous occasions the instability of relying on a contract workforce. It's also creating discontent within the healthcare workers themselves because they know that folks who are on contract, are making upwards of 30% more than they are doing the exact same work on the ground with them as a full-time employee. So it's divisive, it's not working, it's not a long-term solution.
The Ministry of Health says contracted staff are used to fill prolonged vacancies. It says 7 out of 9 ICU beds are occupied at the General. The ministry says that's on par with average, and it doesn't expect the closure of one bed to affect patient care. Researchers at Saskatchewan universities won't be testing wastewater for COVID-19 anymore. Instead, the Provincial Health Authority is taking over testing and reporting. For years, researchers at the U of R and the U of S have tested wastewater for the virus, issuing weekly reports to the public. Experts used the data to predict if COVID cases were increasing or decreasing. But the universities relied on federal funding, and it's run out. Moving forward, the SHA will test wastewater at the provincial lab. It will release information monthly in the summer and bi-weekly in the fall. That's not frequent enough for some.
You have the data. It's not particularly costly to post it online. So why would we not just do it weekly? There's no huge incremental increased expense from doing that, and it has potential to be helpful. So I would like to see it weekly.
We preferred weekly. That's why we came up with that. And we thought that was good. It went from, weekly to no reporting at all was a suggestion at some point, which again, that would not be good. So I think it's a good compromise. Perhaps, it could be upped when, we come into the winter season. They decide to report more frequently as a peak comes up. Right now, levels of things are low, so it's not as needed to have weekly information.
A researcher at the U of S says it makes sense for the SHA to take on wastewater testing and to expand to more communities. The Bank of Canada has raised its trend-setting interest rate again. The quarter-point boost puts it at 5%. It's the 10th increase to the Bank of Canada rate since March of last year. The central bank has been trying to slow the economy in an effort to bring down inflation, but the economy has been more resilient than expected. The bank says strong consumer demand and a strong labor market continue to drive inflation. The next rate setting will be announced September 6th. In Winnipeg today, some of Canada's premiers expressed dismay at the Bank of Canada's interest rate hike. They say there are other ways to control inflation.
The long-term strategy to addressing inflation, in my opinion, is high-quality infrastructure that gets our exports out to a global market and gets our imports in with a minimum amount of friction so that it's cheaper for British Columbians and all Canadians.
To that end, the Premier's called today for a meeting with the Prime Minister to discuss infrastructure. The federal government signaled it will be spending more on infrastructure, including more money for affordable housing. The Assembly of First Nations continued its summer assembly today after spending much of yesterday dealing with the recent removal of National Chief Roseanne Archibald. Today's gathering struck a very different tone. A 3-woman panel released a report on sexual harassment and gender-based discrimination at the National Advocacy Organization. Brett Forrester reports.
Toxic behaviors exist at all levels of the Assembly of First Nations, from the National Chief's Office down to its administrative staff, according to a disturbing new report presented today.
If things don't change, this kind of behavior will keep happening.
First Nations leaders in Assembly fell silent as the 3-woman panel, who spent more than 2 years investigating workplace culture, outlined their findings. As the panelists explained, staffers shared stories of an internal culture tarnished by sexual misconduct, harassment, and bullying.
Sexualized and suggestive comments, unwanted and unwelcome touching, and bullying at the hands of some elders and knowledge keepers who know they are protected by their own position and by others who are in positions of power. made those impacted feel helpless and unheard.
The panel is calling for widespread reform, including banning the use of non-disclosure agreements to muzzle survivors. The emotional and heavy report struck many as an alarming call to action.
Let's take responsibility and let's clean house. Let's clean our organization up. Thank you.
Recently ousted National Chief Roseanne Archibald pressed for this review back in December 2020 when she was still Ontario Regional Chief.
What has happened to me has come from hatred.
But she wasn't there to hear from the panelists because she was barred from the meeting yesterday after failing to convince chiefs to revisit her removal. Newly sworn in interim National Chief Joanna Bernard, seeming moved by the weight of the findings, responded instead.
We are deeply disturbed by what the panel has found. Our organizations must never condone hate, discrimination, or bullying on the basis of gender or sexual orientation.
The Assembly wraps up tomorrow with scheduled addresses from federal politicians. Brett Forster, CBC News, Halifax.
A beautiful look at downtown Regina. It is a vibrant place, especially when the farmers market is going on. And as you know, more veggies will start getting harvested and there will be more to choose from. But what kind of weather will producers have for the next couple days? Ethan will have your forecast after the break. Stay with us. The Saskatchewan Roughriders are playing a cleaner game than last season, so says their coach and the statistics. After the first 4 games last season, the Riders amassed 50 penalties. Yes, 50. After the game against the Elks last week, the Riders' total for the season is 20. Head coach Craig Dickinson says the team is getting the message and that his personal quest since the offseason was to get his team to play cleaner.
We can still do better. So that's the point I'm going to make to the guys. We had 4 last game. 2 of them were preventable. We need to make sure when we can prevent them that we do.
Also, a trio of fines announced by the CFL today after last week's game against Edmonton. Riders defensive back Deontay Williams for a high hit on Elks QB Taylor Cornelius. Edmonton DB Dwayne Thompson for a high hit on Riders wide receiver Tevin Jones. And Elks Connie Ellie for striking Riders D lineman Micah Johnson.
This weather update is brought to you by Capital Ford Lincoln. Employee pricing is on now.
And our weather specialist, Ethan Williams, joins me now. A tamer day out there today.
Yeah, definitely not any of the tornado watches or warnings that we saw yesterday. Things looking a lot better. But those storms yesterday bringing quite a bit of much needed rain to southwestern Saskatchewan. And we could use more in that part of the province. But swift current picking up just over 31 millimeters yesterday. And some rain gauges just to the east of the city showing 50 millimeters in some spots. Swift current, that is the highest single day rainfall total that you've had so far this year. Maple Creek, the last time you had more than just over 19 millimeters was on June 3rd, so more than a month of basically no measurable rain. Shaunavon East End picking up about 13 or so millimeters each, and Rock Glen just getting over 10 millimeters. Now, the rain has moved out of that part of the province, but we are seeing some showers and thunderstorms moving through portions of the northern grain belt, and Meadow Lake, you are getting hit with a bit of a cell right now. It's not under a severe thunderstorm warning, but we do have severe thunderstorm watches out for some storms that are producing in Alberta. The city of Lloydminster actually under a watch right now, but that does not extend eastward into Saskatchewan. Temperatures today, Buffalo Narrows once again our hot spot at 26 degrees. Estevan actually our cool spot today. It was for much of the afternoon hanging around only 17, 18 degrees, and a lot of the south not quite getting to our daytime highs today, but still not bad, into the low to mid 20s, just below seasonal. Things expected to stay clear tonight through much of the province. Tomorrow afternoon, look for the possible development of some thunderstorms popping up in south and central Saskatchewan. In northern Saskatchewan, we are still being affected by this very stagnant area of low pressure that's just been spinning in Hudson Bay over these last few days here, and that could bring through some showers tomorrow afternoon and tomorrow evening through the far north and then eventually migrating into the Churchill region. Not looking for much in the way of accumulation there, maybe only a few millimeters. And in the south and central parts of the province tomorrow, thunderstorm risk largely isolated to areas along and south of the Yellowhead corridor. Not looking for a huge risk here, only a level 1 out of 4 on Environment Canada's thunderstorm outlook. But outside of thunderstorms, winds starting to pick up. It was a nice calm day today, but that changes tomorrow. Winds as that system churns over Hudson Bay, going to pick up close to 50 in the north, and then those will come from the northwest close to 50 tomorrow, or into Friday rather, for south and central. That means smoke will start coming into central regions tomorrow, including Saskatoon through the afternoon. That migrates into southern Saskatchewan, specifically southwestern and west central regions, especially as we head through the evening Thursday. And that still stays with us even as we head into Friday. And we will feel that again in Regina, likely Thursday into Friday, where we have that chance of storms along with those stronger wind gusts as we head through Friday. And then into the weekend, our temperatures cooler, but we get sunnier conditions. Tomorrow in Saskatoon, again, probably looking at that smoke moving in the afternoon, and then things starting to clear out. I know, Sam, you are prone to some allergies from that smoke, so this is your early heads up now.
Every time I see that map, when it flow this way, I do a little, no.
Yeah, just kind of brace ourselves.
But my family lives in BC, so I try to keep my whining to a minimum.
Yes, they do get it quite a bit.
Yes, thanks, Ethan.
You bet.
Well, it's been 1 year since scientists started sharing images from the Webb Space Telescope, and to mark the anniversary, they're sharing stunning views of a cosmic nursery where stars are born. The pictures show dozens of stars being created, some 390 million light years away. All of the young stars appear to be no bigger than our sun. Scientists say the images offer a glimpse of what our own system would have looked like billions of years ago when it was forming. We'll be back after the break. Welcome back. Some veterans and first responders who struggle with PTSD are turning to medical cannabis for relief. And while experts say it doesn't cure their problems, it can help with symptoms. We visited a wellness center in Regina that's helping get people started.
My name is Steve Glode, and I'm one of the veteran ambassadors here at Canna Connect Regina. Spending 27 years in the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, would I ever thought that part of my recovery would have been cannabis? Never.
Dennis Patterson. I'm a veteran. I was in the Air Force, and I was discharged, medically discharged, and I was struggling, and there was no help around for veterans or people struggling with post-traumatic stress disorder. It was a real battle, like uphill battle for me, because I didn't know anybody and I had nobody to talk to. I was under the care of a psychologist, thank God, but you need more.
Canna Connect is a company based out of Toronto, run by 3 young guys. I say young, younger than me. And what they did was, back in 2015, they formalized their company, and they recognized there was a niche in the market for veterans who wanted to try to access a more holistic way of dealing with their injuries, whether it's mental or physical, through the use of cannabis, including CBD. And we do things like trauma-based yoga out here twice a week now. We'll do different things like ice cream socials. We'll do what you see here today, which is a veterans breakfast, just honoring veterans. Again, you don't have to be a client of Canna Connect to be here. You have to be a veteran or a first responder. We also open the doors up to other first responders. It's a sense of belonging, right? We all want to belong to something. If I had this, when I broke in 2015, I say the word broke, but when I was at the point of do I die or do I live, it was 2015. I was never on any long-term medications or anything like that. So when I first went to the doctors, and it was really tough for me because I walked out of there with all these prescriptions. And of course, at this point, you're not at the top of your game anyways. And going from no prescriptions to walking out with 6 months worth of clozapam, lorazepam, zopiclone, you name it, because the nightmares and everything else, and just functioning through the day. I really believe that, and it's important that I qualify what I'm about to say. The journey I'm about to briefly describe is what worked for me. It doesn't mean it works for everybody. So in 2015, when I started, I had heard about gummies and things like that. So I was kind of interested in that, more of a holistic approach. Being a police officer, we could tell you the street value of cannabis, and we could tell you how much time you might get or fine you might get, but I would never have remotely gathered the health benefits to it for me in my journey.
I don't know how many times I drove halfway here and turned around and went home. Before, we were suffering alone, and we didn't know where to go because there wasn't anybody that we could go and talk to. We'd get, the doctors would just kind of throw their hands up in the air after a while and say, you know what, these drugs are supposed to work, but according to me, they're not working, and stuff like that. So my psychologist actually informed me about this place. And so it took a while for me to get the courage up to come here, but once I did, I go, my God, I wish I was here like years ago.
Before I go to bed, I will vape and take a gummy usually, and the vaping gets me relaxed before bed, and the gummy enables me to sleep throughout the night. I don't do that every night, but most nights, and I'll tell you, since I started that, and again, just for me, my nightmares have stopped. Generally, more happier going to bed. I used to be afraid of nighttime, like going to sleep, or I didn't like the things that came with it, but now I look forward to, oh my God, yeah, it's bedtime. And
it's not easy to talk to somebody that they can sympathize, but they don't understand. When we both are struggling with post-traumatic, then we understand each other, and we might not even have to say a word, It's just that comforting to have somebody there that you can actually relate to. You can cut your journey in half by coming here and talking to the people that have already been through that. So and that's a huge benefit to get you going back on the road to recovery, is just knowledge.
I am super proud of everybody in this room, because everybody in this room has fought some sort of struggles in their life, like people.
So once you start using that knowledge to help yourself, then you start to feel that, okay, you know what, I've got some momentum here, I'm starting to feel a little better and stuff, and then it just kind of snowballs in a good direction instead of snowballing in the bad direction.
And Ethan's back with one last look at your weather.
We'll be starting with a mix of sun and cloud in Regina tomorrow, looking at 17 degrees. Winds starting out lighter from the northwest, but picking up as we head toward the afternoon, gusting close to 40. And again, there is that chance of an afternoon storm, but temperature getting close to 25 degrees. Saskatoon, we're looking for mainly sunny skies at 18 tomorrow. Winds picking up as well. And keep in mind that likely by the noon hour, we're going to start to see some of that forest fire smoke start to move in, and that air quality health index likely going to be increasing as well. Drive along any highway in Saskatchewan, or pretty much any highway, and you'll see scenes like this. The golden yellow canola in bloom, paired very nicely with the blue sky that we see out there as well. Thanks to Bob for sending us this shot from near Clavette. Doesn't get any more quintessential Saskatchewan than this, Sam.
That could be a painting.
It really could. Look at the nice blue water, so nice.
Thanks, Ethan.
You bet.
And that is it for us tonight. For News Anytime, you can always head to our website, cbc.ca/Sask or /Saskatoon, or subscribe to the CBC Saskatchewan YouTube channel. Ethan and I will be back with more local news and weather at 11. Thank you for watching. Have a great night.